questions on the final lesson on the Western Front, and it is about the specific questions that will be asked in the exam on this particular section. And the style of questions we're looking at today haven't been asked of you before. This is a new set of exam questions. Knowledge of local, national sources and their relative strengths and weaknesses. So the overview of the course that you're expected to reflect upon. The unscrambling of the words. I'll go through the 10 words. You can pause. You will need to be able to unscramble and explain the significance of each of the words. You can pause here. The Thomas splint, the rather simplistic but highly effective way of dealing with compound fractures and preventing infections. Mobile X-ray machines taken to the battlefield to enable the very quick identification of shrapnel which could bring infection into wounds. Blood transfusions, which existed before World War I, but obviously came into their own during World War I because of the mass number of casualties. Blood storage. It's one thing to be able to transfuse, you need to be able to store blood, especially when you know that the blood is going to be needed. Blood banks. The Battle of Cambrai. The Carroll Deacon method for cleaning wounds. Harold Gillis, the early pioneer of plastic surgery itself, and then the Queen's Hospital. How many of the following questions can you answer? Who invented the Thomas splint? Hugh Owen Thomas. What did the Thomas splint reduce the death rate from? 80% to 20%. By what date did most casualty clearing stations have X-rays? And that was 1916. Who identified different blood groups? That was Karl Landsteiner. Who discovered that adding sodium citrate to blood would stop it clotting? Richard Lewison. What were blood banks used for in the first time? The Battle of Cambrai. What was the Carroll Deacon method? It kept a chemical solution flowing through the wound and stopped infection developing in the first place. How many plastic surgery operations carried out in World War I? 11,000 of them. Who was the New Zealand surgeon who used tube pedicles during World War I? That was Harold Gillis. So, if we're studying trench warfare, as a historian looking back, we have access to a variety of different sources, examples of which are provided here. Army records, national newspapers, government reports, medical articles, personal accounts like diaries, photographs, hospital records, army statistics, books written by historians, and websites. We have a huge amount of material that we can draw upon. Can you identify which of the following sources are national and which are local? You can pause here and consider this account. Army records are national. National newspapers are national, as with government reports. Medical articles are also national. Personal accounts, however, would be local. Photographs local. Hospital records local. Army statistics can be local if they're based upon specific regiments from different parts of the country. Books written by national historians, national, and websites national. What questions can we ask of these historical sources? Well, to test them, we can ask a series of questions. Is the information accurate? Why does an author have a particular opinion? Is the source representative? In other words, it might be accurate, but is the experience in one source the case in another source? Is it reliable? Was the author biased, intentionally or unintentionally? Does the source support what I already know? What are the weaknesses of the source? Why is it not perfect? What are the strengths of the source? What other sources can I use to check it? This is all part of the everyday work of an historian. A series of sources that we have here. You're going to need to read through those sources. And then what you're going to do is complete the table attached. The source, what type of source is it? An example of a question I could ask, what type of source I could use to check it, how might this answer my question? So the source, for example, the medical index card, it's a national source. What could I ask? How could I check this? How might it help? To finish, we will look at the last example of the question, and this is called the follow-up question. The final question in the exam is called the follow-up question. You will be asked to read a source, then asked to answer some follow-up questions. How could you follow up source B to find out more about the problems involved in performing operations on the Western Front? So this is an example of a question you might get asked, and you have to answer the specific question. So how could you follow up source B to find out more about the problems involved in performing operations on the Western Front? Details in the source I would follow up. You're going to need to provide a quote from the source. The question you would ask can be any question provided it is about problems involved in performing operations. What type of source I could use? We'll think about the ones we've already talked about, and then how might that help answer my question. So it's very easy to get all the marks correct, and equally it's very easy to get all of this wrong if you do not answer the specific question provided. There is the source. You can pause and read. And then apply the question structure. Details I would follow up, questions I would ask, what source I could use, how might this help? So for an example answer, I could only transfusion occasional patient. Question I would ask, why were the transfusions such a problem? So please note, the details in the source I would follow up come specifically from the source about the question. Why were the transfusions such a problem? What type of source I could use? How this might help.